Disney made four very good, some would say great, movies back in the 1970s. By this time, Walt Disney had passed away, but he did have a hand in a couple of the feature films from this decade. And while each of these films is special in its own way, I did enjoy some more than others. Let me start with my number 4 film, Robin Hood. Robin Hood came out in 1973, and it's based on the classic Robin Hood story, except that it's an animated musical with singing foxes, bears, and roosters, but if you're a Disney fan, that's probably why you love it. The highlights for me is the singing rooster played by Roger Miller, the country music singer, and also Phil Harris that voices the bear Little John. You might know him from The Jungle Book. Yep, he was Baloo. The animation on this one seemed a little flatter for me than some of the other ones in our list. Although I do think the voice casting was great, I think the voices fit the characters very well. And while this one is not my favorite of the 70s, I still have a warm place in my heart for this one, like most of you probably do. It's definitely still a good Disney movie, and I would still recommend this one. At number 3 is The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. This one came out in '77, and it was a compilation of mostly previously released shorts. Now this is a story that was known in Europe before it was introduced here in the United States, but this has really turned into one of Disney's biggest franchises. To me, this is a charming, simple, and happy little story. It's just basically a story about Winnie the Pooh and all of his friends, which are different kinds of animals that live in the 100-acre wood. But it's done in such a relaxing and warm way that it just makes you feel like a kid. I think Sebastian Cabot adds a lot as the narrator voice. And the way that this is done by actually showing the book and the turning of the pages really makes it neat. This one's a little bit different than most Disney animated movies in that there's no villain, which is just kind of interesting. It doesn't hurt the story at all. What really moves the story along in Winnie the Pooh are the characters themselves. They get into silly predicaments of their own creation. They're kind of their own worst enemy that way. To me, this is the most important scene in the movie and really a real tearjerker when Winnie the Pooh is on the bridge there and he asks Christopher Robin if he's going to forget him when he goes away. So this one comes in at number 3, not because I don't love it, I really do, but the other two are just so awesome. My number 2 favorite is The Aristocats. The Aristocats is based on a real family of cats in France that were the heirs of a large fortune. This was the first Disney film to be produced after Walt Disney's death, and it was also the last film to be greenlighted by Walt Disney himself. So this one has some similarities also to Lady and the Tramp, but I actually like it better. For one, the owners of Lady and the Tramp went off on vacation, I believe, and left Lady in the care of someone who really didn't know anything about dogs or really care anything about dogs. The elderly widow in the Aristocats that owned Duchess and the Kittens was in every way a good, responsible pet owner. She loved her cats. Lady and the Tramp also painted kind of a dismal view of what it's like for homeless animals. There was a scene in the shelter where they were leading one of the dogs out to be euthanized, I guess. In the Aristocats, even the homeless cats who don't make it into a home by the end of the movie are having a party at a jazz club and having a good time. It's just a little bit more of a positive feel. To me, the Aristocats is just a little more hopeful. I really like the look of the backgrounds and just the feel of this movie. It's set in Paris, and some of the backgrounds are just very artistic and have a really neat feel to them. One of Disney's go-to voice actors during this time period, Ava Gabor, voices Duchess the cat. And we've got the familiar Sherman Brothers writing all the songs for this movie. This is a cute little song called Scales and Arpeggios, sung by the Kittens. So the butler, who is the heir if anything happens to these cats, decides he's going to get the cats out of the way so he can inherit the fortune. Even the villain in this movie, the butler, who takes the cats out and drops them off in the middle of nowhere, is really not that scary of a villain. He's kind of low-key. We've got some of the same voice actors here. So Phil Harris, that played Little John in Robin Hood, plays Thomas O'Malley Cat. in the Aristocats. I really like the dogs, Napoleon and Lafayette, voiced by Pat Buttram and George Lindsay. They've got a lot of personality, and I think they really add to the story. This one just kind of makes me happy, which is what a Disney movie is supposed to do, right? And I think it kind of gets overlooked, so if you haven't checked this one out, I would recommend it. And my number one favorite Disney animated movie of the 1970s is The Rescuers. This movie was very well received and a real confidence builder to the Walt Disney Animation Department. It let them know they could still make great movies after Walt Disney's death. I think this is really one of Disney's most underrated animated movies. This is the story of two mice from the Rescue Aid Society who go looking for a little girl that's been kidnapped by treasure hunters. Disney chose to use kind of a cool but dark color palette here that really works to give it that sense of adventure and suspense. Both of the main characters here, the mice, Bernard and Bianca, are very likable, and this is just really a fun movie to watch from beginning to end. This was really the biggest success that Disney Animation had between The Jungle Book in 1967 and The Little Mermaid in 1989. This was also the first Walt Disney animated feature to inspire a sequel, and it would be the last Disney animated movie to receive an Oscar nomination until The Little Mermaid. Bernard was voiced by the great Bob Newhart, somebody you probably wouldn't expect to do a lot of voice acting, but I think he was perfect for this role. And there's several other voice actors in this movie that are going to be familiar to you. One is Ava Gabor, she does the voice of Bianca. Pat Buttram, Mr. Haney himself from Green Acres, is back as the voice of Luke. And also Rabbit might sound familiar to you. That's George Lindsay, he plays Goober on The Andy Griffith Show. Well, there you have it. That's my rankings for the Disney animated movies of the 70s. So how would you rank these 4 movies? Which ones are your favorites? Leave a comment below, I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this, consider subscribing to our channel and give us a big thumbs up, we'd appreciate it.